See what we got. All right, guys. We're going to start this relatively quick. The Big Ten, Week 6, is here for college football. Big Ten doesn't really have any great big games this week. Week 7, we'll be talking about a couple of them, mainly just Penn State and Michigan. That's next week, but Penn State has a bye this week, which is huge for them. I think Minnesota also has a bye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So those two teams have a bye this week. So we won't get to see Penn State or Minnesota, but a relatively good, I would say, span of games, especially in the early afternoon cap. But anyway, let's start it off with Nebraska versus Rutgers. Nebraska actually is a 3-point road favorite, and there's this rule in betting that a lot of people go by, and even myself, if you were going to bet this game, I always advise to take the home underdog. We've seen it in years past, weeks past, where the home underdog ends up outright winning, but at least covers the spread. But this point spread is just 3 points. A tale of two completely different teams. You have Nebraska, who's more of the offensive team, and you have Rutgers, more of the defensive team. Rutgers is in the hundreds based off of total offense. Nebraska, on the other hand, is in the hundreds in total defense. I mean, they're giving up 470 yards per game. That's insanely bad. That's historically bad for a team like Nebraska, especially when last year they kind of, I'm not going to say they were 100% relied on their defense, but their defense played a big part in playing those games close. All 9 of those games within 9 points. 8 of those 9 were by 1 possession. Obviously, the Ohio State game was a home game. They lost 26-17. But anyway, Nebraska had a bye week before last week. Went and beat, I think it was Indiana. They kind of controlled that game. They won 35-21. That was a big win for Nebraska after 2 weeks prior hosting Oklahoma and getting absolutely destroyed. Now, it turned out Oklahoma's just not a great team. Oklahoma is 0-2 since then, and Oklahoma's defense, man, went from top 25 to now in the 80s. Pretty bad in just a span of 2 weeks. But anyway, Nebraska, offensively, I thought they've been playing pretty well this year. Casey Thompson, he's got a, 7.4 touchdown interception ratio. Still throwing for almost 1,300 yards. I think he might have 100 yards rushing. Anthony Grant has 600 yards rushing. Top 5 in the Big Ten in rushing yards. Trey Palmer has played pretty well. So the offense for Nebraska is obviously not the issue. It's pretty much the defense. Like I said, they gave a 49 to Oklahoma, over 500-something yards. Who do you guys think is going to win this game, by the way? Comment below. Gave up over 500 yards to Oklahoma. Gave up, I think, 500 yards to Northwestern. Gave Northwestern their only win of the year. And their defense, man, has just been pretty bad, especially in the front 7. Giving up over 200 yards rushing per game. That's insanely bad. It's actually worst in the Big Ten. And they're 14th out of 14th, which is worse than the Big Ten for total defense. Nothing to really rave about defensively. But Rutgers, on the other hand, they're top 20 in the nation defensively in total yards. The problem is their offense. Especially last week, they threw in 4 different guys under center. They're just Greg Schiano is just trying to figure out what he can get offensively. And the FPI is actually predicting Rutgers to win this game outright by 55%. And I think the FPI had this game being like 20. Well, it's a weird score. It's like 22-18 or something like that. So a lower scoring game. But I think with how things have gone with Nebraska, I think Rutgers will be able to get some yards in this game. I think Nebraska's defense will play a little bit better. I thought they played fine last week. They're tightening it up, especially in the front 7. This is a tough one. This is a game that I think Rutgers needs more than Nebraska. Nebraska already lost Scott Frost. They're only playing for spoiler and to get to a bowl game, I suppose. Rutgers is really playing for a bowl game. They got it last year by a miracle, to be fair. They were 5-7. They played Wake Forest, correct? Because Texas A&M couldn't make it to the bowl game or something like that. This is a must-win for both teams, but I think it's more of a must-win for Rutgers. I just think Nebraska's offense will be just a little bit too much for Rutgers, and I actually have Nebraska going into New Jersey and taking a win from Rutgers, 31-24 on the road, covering that. What is it? 3? Yeah, I said 3 points, and winning outright, which is against, like I said, the FPI, which has Rutgers at a 55% chance of winning this game, or the college football index, if you know the FPI. But yeah, I think Nebraska's going to come in and win this game on the road. By the way, shout out to Nebraska in the Big Ten West. Nebraska is currently tied for first place in the Big Ten West. Kind of an odd thing to see, especially from a team that has a losing record. Moving on here, speaking of teams that have a losing record, how about Northwestern and Wisconsin? This is another interesting game. This comes on Saturday. I forgot to tell. Yeah, no, I think I did say the Rutgers game was Friday. This comes on Saturday. Wisconsin just lost Paul Chryst. They got absolutely destroyed for the second week in a row, this time to Illinois. I mean, they just got dominated on the line of scrimmage. That's something that you never usually see from a team like Wisconsin. I mean, they gave up 34 points, gave up only gave up 140 yards rushing against a really good rush offensive team, but it was the turnovers that just killed Wisconsin. I mean, 3 turnovers in this game, 2 interceptions by Graham Mertz, a fumble loss. All 3 of these turnovers gave Illinois the ball inside the 40, I believe. And Illinois, what they do with these turnovers, they scored. And that's what you do, especially when you're an underdog on the road. Believe it or not, Wisconsin was actually, I think they were a double-digit favorite, if I'm not mistaken, against Illinois. No, they were about a 7-point favorite against Illinois. No, I didn't have a live stream. I actually took Illinois outright, and that paid off. Illinois is a much better team than what people think. But Illinois dominated them pretty much on the line of scrimmage. That's pretty much it. I mean, you held one of the best historical rush offenses in the Big Ten to just 2 yards on 24 carries. Hey, hats off, especially on the road. How about Brett Bielema and his Illinois Badgers? Only 1 loss this year. Northwestern, on the other hand, they're a team that is now 0-4 in their last 4 games. They got dominated by Duke, lost to, I think, Southern Illinois, lost to Miami of Ohio. But last week, they played pretty well, in my opinion, against Penn State. Yes, they gave up a couple yards. They couldn't score. This game should have been coming down to the last play, in my opinion, with how well I thought Northwestern's defense played, holding Penn State to just 17 points. Yes, they did give up some yards, like I said. Held Sean Clifford pretty well, forced the turnover. I believe that turnover took place across the 50, so that was a huge stop. They did give up over 200 yards rushing, but like I said, they held pretty well defensively, getting stops when they needed to. Believe it or not, Northwestern is a 10-point home underdog in this game. Wisconsin just lost their head coach. This is another potential trap game if you are betting this game. I think 10 points is a lot. I think I'm going to take Northwestern in the points, and believe it or not, I'm going to ride Northwestern outright 24-17 at home against Wisconsin. This Northwestern team isn't great offensively. I get it. Their defense really, for the first half of the season, or for the first 3 games of the year, played pretty bad, if we're being honest, giving up over 30 points per game, or averaging around 30, I think 29.5, whatever. In the past 2 games, their defense has actually stepped up, has been able to force turnovers when they needed to. Their offense just hasn't been good enough. I don't know what to expect from here on from this Wisconsin team. I love Braylon Allen. He's one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. His offensive line is just not as good as what it usually is, and that's another thing. Another tough part is the fact that Graham Mertz is the same Graham Mertz that he is that he has been, and he's just not good enough. I mean, this Graham Mertz has, I think, just as many turnovers as he does touchdowns. I know he has 8 passing touchdowns, but I think he has a couple fumbles, and I know he has 5 or 6 interceptions that have cost Wisconsin a lot. These wide receivers for Wisconsin really don't get that much separation, but I'm going to take Ryan Hilinski. I think he's a better quarterback than Graham Mertz. Yes, his stats are not blowing people away, but I don't know what to expect from this Wisconsin team. Are they going to play angry because they lost their head coach, or are they just going to quit and say it's over because they lost head coach Paul Chryst? And here's another weird thing. This is starting to feel like now you guys can call me whatever, but this is starting to feel like a 2018 season for a team like Northwestern. You got a veteran quarterback, a veteran running back, a couple pretty solid wide receivers. Marcus Rossington, he's having a pretty solid year for Northwestern, and a veteran defense. Yes, they are 1-4, but they also started 1-4 back in 2018 and ended up they started 1-3 and ended up finishing the year 8-4, winning their division. The Big Ten West in 2018 was absolutely terrible, probably as bad as what it is now. Northwestern was able to lose all 3 of their non-con games and ended up winning the Big Ten West. And it all started from that Michigan game. No, they did not beat Michigan. They lost that game. It was very, very close. Came down to the wire. I think they ended up losing by 10 because Michigan did score a last-minute, basically, touchdown when Northwestern was trying to get a stop. But then they turned it around the week after that, and they beat Michigan State. They dominated Michigan State. I think they won like 29-19. I get the score isn't really, that's not going to indicate how much they dominated that game, but their defense played extremely well. They were up 29-13 at one point. Michigan State went down and scored a touchdown, upset Michigan State, and then they went on a winning streak before losing to Notre Dame, but then ended up going to the Big Ten title game. I'm not saying that could happen, but with how bad the Big Ten West is, I potentially, call me crazy, I could end up seeing it. That year they lost to a MAC team, they lost to Duke, and they also lost to Illinois State. This year, they lost to a MAC team in Miami of Ohio. They lost to Southern Illinois, an FCS team, and they also lost to Duke. Both those Duke games, they got absolutely destroyed. After, by the way, winning their first game of the year, which I think they beat Purdue that year. It was a road game. It was a Thursday night game. It was a really, really, really good game, to say the least. And they were able to win that game, pulling off the upset, just like they did against Nebraska. So maybe we could see something like that. I would have liked to see Northwestern beat Southern Illinois, obviously, and Miami of Ohio. But if you know Northwestern, this is what they kind of do week in, week out. Season out with Pat Fitzgerald. They kind of struggle with these non-con games, but turn it up in Big Ten play. I like what I saw last week defensively for Northwestern. They've clearly gotten better. If their offense and their skill set players can start playing a little bit better, I think this team has a slight chance repeating what they did in 2018. But I'm going to take Northwestern in this game by 7 points. Give me those 10 points. You can have them. I'm going to take the money line here. The money line bet, by the way, if you take Northwestern, I think is plus 285. So that's a pretty good bet. The over-under set at 44. I think that's about right. I don't expect a lot of points in this game. Maybe I gave up both teams a couple more touchdowns than maybe they'll get. Maybe I should have, honestly. But, I'm going to ride Northwestern. I think I almost said Clayton Thorson. Sorry. I think Ryan Hilinski is just miles better than Graham Mertz. His stats don't say it. I just think just watch him play. Hilinski's got the better IQ. He's not a fast QB. He's not going to wow you with his legs, but I think he can make enough plays to win this game. I'm going to take Northwestern outright. Speaking of, this is probably going to be the best game of the day. This game I think comes on 12 Eastern. This is a noon kickoff game between Purdue and Maryland. Let me know who you guys think is going to win between Wisconsin and Northwestern. I took Northwestern, and I took a money line straight up. How about that? Even those 10 points. You can have them. But Who do you guys think is going to win between this one? Purdue and Maryland. Maryland comes in as a 2.5 point home favorite. Both teams are really good offensively. Both teams are top 30 in total yards. One team is more of a heavy passing team. Maryland is a little bit they're not more, I mean, they're a little bit more balanced, I would say, but they aren't going to wow you through the ground game. They had a really good week last week. In fact, Maryland has played pretty well this year. Let's just say it as it is. Maryland was that sleeper team in the Big Ten East and really just in the Big Ten as a whole. A lot of people think Maryland could possibly get somebody. Who is it going to be? Well, they couldn't get Michigan. They played pretty well on the road, ended up losing by 7. I think they covered that spread. I think it was 8 points. No, it was 17. Wow, I was way wrong. They ended up covering that. I think I honestly thought they would. Talia Tagovailoa played decent. Had a couple turnovers in that game against Michigan. Their defense was holding up pretty well until the fourth quarter. Blake Corum went off, man. Blake Corum had, I think, 250 yards rushing in that game. And it's kind of weird because Michigan only had 250 yards rushing against Maryland or something like that. I think their other running backs and even J.J. McCarthy combined for like 10 yards. So, I mean, there's that. But, yeah, Blake Corum is really, really good. We'll talk about him when I get to Michigan, which will be after this game. But this is probably going to be the most exciting game, in my opinion. Speaking of good quarterback play, Aiden O'Connell, I'm not going to say he played well last week. Kind of struggled. Purdue as a whole kind of struggled. I think he was injured one game, wasn't he? I don't know about that. But, yeah, it was a weird week. It was a weird game, against Minnesota. A lot of turnovers between both sides. I think both teams had 4 turnovers in that game. It was a road win for Purdue. They get another that was a big road win against Minnesota, getting their first Big Ten win of the year after losing to, Penn State. Penn State's a good team, though. Penn State has off this week, so not going to really talk about them this week. But this is going to be a very, very, very good game. The over-under is set, I think, at 60. Oh, it's at 59. I'm going to ride the over. I think both of these offenses will get yards. They'll get points. They'll get down in the red zone. Whose defense am I trusting the most is going to be the team I think is going to win this game. And I'm going to go with the home team. I'll take those 2.5. Give them to me, I guess. This is more me riding the home team. If this was at Purdue, I would go Purdue. Since this is at Maryland, I'm going to take the home team in Maryland. I also like these wide receivers, Copeland, obviously Raheem Jarrett, a couple other good ones for Maryland. Deshaun Jones, Maryland has a pretty good wide receiving core this year. And the Iowa transfer for Purdue, is that Charlie Jones, right, has come out of pretty much nowhere. I mean, look what happens when he has a quarterback. But we'll talk about that after this Michigan game. But I'm going to ride Maryland. Give me those points, I guess. I'm going to take Maryland to win this game 38-34. Now we're going to talk about the Michigan game. Boy, this was kind of upsetting, in my opinion, to find out that Michigan got the Big Ten kickoff 3 weeks in a row. Okay, I get it with Maryland. That turned out to be a good game. But last week, really, against Iowa, I get it's a road game at Iowa. Iowa's a very, very, very good defensive team. I never really thought Michigan was going to lose that game. And, oh, by the way, I'm 5 for 5 when picking with these Michigan spreads. I chose them to cover against who they play, Colorado State week 1. I think I ended up taking Hawaii. Because that spread was insane. Wasn't it like 50-something points? I took Hawaii, was right about that. Took Michigan against UConn, was right about that. Took Maryland plus a 17, was right about that. And last week I rode Michigan on the road against Iowa. Oh, by the way, that was only 11-point spread. I thought that was a little bit disrespectful. But, hey, Michigan did end up winning by 13. Covers that 11.5, just saying. So I've been dead on with Michigan. Now they get to play Indiana on the road. Let's just say it as it is. Indiana isn't the biggest home field advantage. They don't have the biggest home field advantage. It's going to be a clear day, I think, in Bloomington. I love Tom Allen. I love his coaching staff. I love his coaching philosophy. He gets out as much as he can. They're on a 2-game losing streak. Didn't cover in their past 2 games. Actually, sorry, their past 3. Let me check that. Are they? Sorry, his last 4 games, he has not covered a spread. This is a tough pick, I would say. If you're going to bet this game, it is a noon game. But look who Michigan plays next week. Is this a potential, sleepwalk game that we have yet to see from Michigan? Michigan has, played exceptionally well up to this point. They're one of the 3 most consistent teams. In fact, they're the only team so far that I've watched that I'm like, yeah, they're not losing this game. J.J. McCarthy has played well. He hasn't really been put in situations where he has to win you the game just yet. I think he's way more talented, obviously, but I think he's better than Cade McNamara. Blake Corum, talk about one of the best running backs, not just in the Big Ten. He is the best in the Big Ten. We'll talk about Chase Brown when we get to the Illinois game. I think that's after this. But I think he leads the Big Ten in rushing yards, 611 yards in 5 games. And you also have to take account in the first 3 games of the year, he only played half the game. These past 2 weeks when he's been playing majority of the games, and in fact, all of the games, he's been going off. I think he had a combined 350 yards rushing in the past 2 games with like 6 touchdowns. Insane. How about that? But Michigan is a 23.5-point road favorite. Noon game. Bloomington, well, is on the road. Indiana has struggled. But hey, I think Tom Allen's going to get as much as he can. Connor Bazelak is miles better than Tuttle. They also got Shivers. I think he was from Auburn. Yeah, he's from Auburn. Running back. Their rushing game could be better. They have a couple good wide receivers. Defensively, Indiana's not really great. They're giving up about 27-ish points per game. On the other hand, Michigan's giving up under 18. The numbers will tell you to take Michigan and the points. I'm not going to do that this week. I'm going to take Indiana to 23.5. 23.5 is a lot to cover, especially on the road. It's the big noon game, which is kind of like Fox's primetime game, I guess. I don't know. I don't really like it at that particular time. Again, I didn't really think this game should be Fox's biggest game of the year or of the week. I'd rather see the TCU Kansas game. How about both those teams undefeated? That's where College Game Day is. But anyway, but I'm going to take Indiana cover to 23.5. I think it'll be a late cover, and this score prediction might make some of you Michigan fans mad, but I think Indiana keeps it closer than 23. I think they'll score. I think Michigan will be up like 28 to 6 or 10 at the half, and then cruise control by, and then Indiana gets some points, especially in the fourth quarter. I have this being a closer than expected game. I'm not saying this is the game where Michigan, completely struggles. We've seen Georgia do it multiple weeks in a row. Alabama do it against Texas. Ohio State did it against Notre Dame. You name it. Clemson, they struggled for the first half against Georgia Tech. They struggled against Wake Forest. They got lucky to win that game, we're being honest. Who else? USC. USC, talk about teams lucky to win. They should have lost to Oregon State. I'm not going to get into that. But I'm going to take Michigan to win the game, obviously. But I'm going to take Indiana to cover that, to cover that 23.5. I think Connor Bazelect makes enough plays to get them in scoring situations. Maybe I think they'll do just enough to somewhat keep them within 20 for the entire game. I don't expect Michigan to go on the road and absolutely destroy Indiana. Again, look who they have next week. One of the biggest games, not just in the Big Ten, but in college football with how good both these teams are. Hopefully, they don't get caught looking ahead. Michigan, like I said, is pretty much the only team that I've seen that has not had a game in which I'm like, yeah, Michigan could lose this game. No, they've dominated every team that they played, won every game very convincingly. I think this is a good enough win, obviously, especially on the road against a mediocre at best Indiana team. Indiana, Rutgers, and Michigan State will be fighting for last place. I think as of right now, for me, it's between Michigan State and and Rutgers. But let me know who you guys think is going to win this game. I think Michigan will win this game easily. But let me know who's going to cover this spread. 23.5 points is a lot to lay, especially on the road. But with how good Michigan has been, I give them credit. I would, in normal circumstances, I would take Michigan. But I'm going to ride with Tom Allen and Connor Bazelect, and hoping and praying that this front seven for Indiana is able to show up. I know they give up a good bit amount of rushing yards on paper. Like I said, this could be it. This could be a completely dominated game. But we saw with teams like Georgia last week against Missouri, Missouri's front seven came to play. Could we see something like that from Indiana? I'm going to ride and bank off of it. But anyway, moving on to our second to last game, the only game in the nightcap, believe it or not, for the Big Ten, Iowa and Illinois. Oh, man, Iowa, they're lucky to be 3-2, if we're being completely honest. Probably should have lost to South Dakota State. Their offense didn't score in this game. I mean, no touchdowns. I think they had one drive where they went down and scored a field goal. They got a safety from their defense, and they basically got a field goal from their defense as well. And then they had the game against Iowa State. Gave up 10 points and still lost. And then their offense started to play better. I mean, they shut out Nevada 27-0. I mean, this team hasn't scored more than 27 points, and they were lucky to get to 27 against Nevada. So, obviously, two defensive teams, two kind of even teams, are being honest with how good Illinois has played. The better rush team is clearly Illinois. They have a better running back, Chase Brown, who actually does lead the Big Ten in rushing yards. My bad. I thought it was Bryce Corum, or Blake Corum. My bad. Jeez. But Chase Brown actually does lead the Big Ten in rushing yards at, I think he has almost 800 yards rushing. Insane numbers there. Just a couple touchdowns. But Tommy DeVito has been a much better quarterback. They're getting much better quarterback play from Tommy DeVito than what they had been in years past. Brett Bielema, his offensive line's playing really, really well. Like I said, this is one of the better rush offenses in the Big Ten. And oh, by the way, they're top 5 in rush defense. Illinois is a very good team. They are much improved, and this is only year 2, right, for Brett Bielema. Spencer Petras, I will say this: he has played better, just not up to standards. And I get it. What's the standard at quarterback for Iowa? Well, I'm going to say this: he has not played like he should be playing. Just 2 touchdowns on the year, 2. And 5 games started? Embarrassing numbers there. This is a terrible offensive team. But Illinois has obviously looked like the better team so far. I thought Iowa played a pretty solid game defensively, at least against Michigan. Their offensive line played absolutely terrible. You got to give Michigan's front 7 a lot of credit. But man, Iowa has regressed while Illinois has progressed, has made so much progress this year. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet for you. Believe it or not, the over-under in this game is actually 36 points. And oh, by the way, I have it about right there. I am going to take Illinois. I think Tommy DeVito and Chase Brown are the 2 better players, or the 2 best players on. They will be the 2 best players on the field. I have not been impressed with Iowa at all, obviously. the Big Ten West is wide open. I don't know who's going to win the Big Ten West. Even the East. The East is pretty competitive so far. There are two clear front runners, and then you have Penn State on the other hand. Maryland would need an absolute miracle at this point. But Illinois, I think, is going to come in, win this game. They're going to have a little bit more rushing yards. Whoever has the most rushing yards in this game will win because both teams live and die on the in between the line of scrimmage. I've been more impressed with Illinois' line of scrimmage. Obviously, they only have one loss on the year. They've been dominating pretty much every game so far. Their one loss came to Indiana on a Friday night. Indiana was lucky to win that game. Let's be real here. Indiana still won. I'll give them credit. But that was a miracle win. In fact, Illinois should have won that game. But anyway, finally, the game that I guess a lot of people are waiting for, Ohio State and Michigan State. Now, Ohio State has completely killed every team so far. Michigan State hasn't been the same since the Washington massacre. The spread on this game is Ohio State minus 28. They go on the road in East Lansing. Yeah, Ohio State just came off a huge win against Rutgers. They were a huge underdog. Yeah, they were a huge I can't talk. They had a huge spread in that game, a huge line. I think they didn't cover by just 1 point. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was like 40 points exactly. You guys can tell me who you think what the spread was. I probably should have wrote that down. But anyway, it's at 28 for this game. That's a lot of points to lay. The over-under is set at 66. Again, that's a lot of points in this game. Yes, I do think Ohio State's defense is much improved. I think they'll give up a couple points for Michigan State. This is a game in which Michigan State has to show up. They need to wake up offensively and defensively. Their offense has scored a measly 20 points in their past 2 games. It has been a terrible season so far for a team that was preseason top 15 for some reason. Again, I've never been high on Michigan State. Don't know how they got to top 15. Peyton Thorne playing terrible. Let's just say it as it is. He has not been good at all. The rush game has been mediocre at best. Boy, do they miss Kenneth Walker from last year. I knew he was going to play a huge part, but I thought Jalen Berger, right? He's from Wisconsin. Yeah. I thought he would be more of a uplifter. I know he's not going to be Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, insane numbers from last year. But I thought Jalen Berger would have a more impact for this year, and he just hasn't yet. Broken off. Coach Knowles for Ohio State has been huge, to say the least. I mean, Ohio State's defense is miles better than last year. They're giving up about 130 less yards than up to this point from last season. And their defense wasn't even terrible last year. It was just pretty bad in their biggest games, like against Utah, like against Oregon, like against Penn State, like against not Penn State, like against Michigan, obviously, and then a Minnesota game that their defense played pretty bad. And obviously they did give up the points against Purdue last year, whatever. They were up 40 something to 10 or 17 at half. Like, that's how good Ohio State's offense was last year. Is it better this year? Well, I was told it was going to be much better than what it was last year. I would say it isn't. It's still really, really, really good. Ohio State's insane offensively, the best team. Just watch them play. They're the number one in scoring offense, so they're going to get their points. They're going to surpass 40 yards in this game, or 40 yards. They're going to surpass 40 points in this game. That's why that over-under is set so high. The only question, I know Ohio State's going to win this game. I'll ask you guys the same question. Do you think Michigan State can cover 28 points? 28 points is a lot to lay. Michigan State needs this game. They need to come out and play a good game to give their team some type of hope. Yes, you are playing really, really you're playing terrible. Let's just get to the chase here. You've been playing really, really bad. Got dominated on the line of scrimmage in the past 3 games. You play the best team that you'll play all year. You get them at home. Again, Ohio State has looked much different since the Notre Dame game, especially offensively. They even racked up almost 80 points against Toledo. This is a tough one for me for the spread. I think it will be right around there. I was going back and forth with seeing if I believed enough in Michigan State to cover the spread. Again, this score prediction might make some of you guys mad. I'm going to take Ohio State to win outright. Duh. But I'm going to go Michigan State to cover. I'm just banking on the fact that Michigan State, clearly a much better roster than Rutgers, than who was the team that Ohio State played before? Wasn't it Wisconsin? They have a better roster than Wisconsin. They're I don't know if they're a better team than Wisconsin, but I think Michigan State will play much better. This is a game that they have to at least show up, or this is going to be a historically bad season. Like, they could legitimately go 2-10. You remember, kind of like Indiana last year. This Michigan State team kind of reminds me of that. This might be a stupid choice to take Michigan State in those points. I'm banking on the fact that they're going to cover late in the game. Last year, let's talk about last year. Ohio State was like a 17-point home favorite. I took Ohio State in the points because of how bad Michigan State's pass defense was. I mean, it was literally the worst in the country. But I didn't expect it to be 56-7. I don't expect it to be that bad. I mean, it sure as heck could be with how bad Michigan State's defense is. Again, it's really, really bad. Pass defense, they've been playing pretty bad. But rush defense. I mean, look how many yards they gave up against Minnesota. They gave up 240 yards against Minnesota. I get it. Minnesota's the best rush offensive team in the Big Ten, but dude, that's terrible. Even against Maryland, 175 yards. They've been getting dominated on the line of scrimmage. I don't even want to look at the stats for the Washington game because they got killed through the air. Michael Penix went off against Michigan State. I'm going to take Ohio State to win, obviously. I don't think this game will be that close. We'll take Michigan State to cover those 28 points. So, guys, let me know what you guys think. Who is the lock of the week in the Big Ten? I like Northwestern plus 10. I don't know what to expect from Wisconsin. Again, I told you Nebraska game and the Nebraska and Rutgers game and Northwestern Wisconsin are probably the two trap games you probably should not bet, simply because both teams don't have a coach coming into this game. So let me get to your comments before I end the stream. Those are my predictions. Tell me how right I am, or tell me how wrong I will be for this week. Go Blue. Michigan has a big game next week. I'll try to cover that next Thursday. But anyway, if Nebraska wins the West, this will be one of the weirdest seasons of all time. Bring it on, Nebraska, this weekend. 49-24, Cornhusker Corner. Shout out to him. Wow, 49-24. That's a big blowout. I wouldn't really expect that. I think they obviously, I'll get to your second comment, they obviously do have nothing to lose. We usually have everything to lose. But 49-24, wow. Rutgers isn't that bad. And no disrespect to Nebraska, but I don't think there's many teams Nebraska could really blow out. Glad I'm not a betting man. It's hard to predict teams this year. Yeah, it has been. Heck, those people that ride Ohio State are breaking about dead even. Ohio State's 2-1 against the spread this year. Ohio State is probably by far the safest Big Ten team to usually take the points with. But hey, they're definitely top three in the country when it comes to against the spread and taking the points. They're very consistent. Ryan Day is really consistent with laying those. Technically, so they're 2-1. I think they pushed last week. That's my guess. I think they pushed last week. Penn State's defense was really good last week. They gave the ball away 5 times. You really never see a team do that and still win. Yeah. Northwestern got down to the red zone a couple times and they just couldn't score. Penn State's a really good team. Penn State is a team that is going to compete with Ohio State. They're going to compete against Michigan. They might even win one of those games, believe it or not. 4. Okay. Blake Corum is statistically not as good as Mayan Williams from Ohio State, I believe. I think that's who he's talking about. He's got to be. Yards per carry is a stat to follow. Yeah, I understand. Oh, Mayan Williams, didn't he go for over like 300 yards last week or something? No, I think he had over 200 against Rutgers or whatever. Let me look at his yard per carry. It's 7.8. Yeah, I mean that's elite. Let's be real here. Blake Corum's at around 6.2. I get it, but watch Blake Corum. He's an all-purpose back too. He can catch passes as well. I'm just going to be honest with you. Blake Corum is the best running back in the Big Ten, at least so far. Just saying. I can even pull up the stats to prove that. But yeah, Mayan Williams has stepped up. What about Henderson? I don't know how many yards. I think he has over 300 yards as well. Indiana is horrible on a good day. No, on a good day, they're a decent team. It's just a lot of points to lay. Do you want to borrow some scissors? That's funny. I am getting a haircut soon. Michigan will cover easily. Ooh, hey, like I said, on paper, you're right. I think Michigan on paper will definitely cover easily, but they have a big game next week. And again, Michigan has not had a game in which that a lot of people have seen, Michigan has not had a game in which that anyone's gone, oh yeah, Michigan could end up losing this game. I mean, Ohio State did against Notre Dame. They were down for majority of the game, weren't they? They were down like 10-7 until like midway through the third quarter. I mean, I knew they were going to win, but I mean, you know what I mean. Georgia, as a Georgia fan, I really thought Georgia was going to lose. I'm not even kidding, especially after I saw Missouri, Beavis or whatever, the kicker, kick a 60-yard kick and make it to make it 22-12. It was just everything was seemingly going Missouri's way. And then Alabama, if we're being honest here, Alabama should have lost to Texas. So Michigan, out of those, Michigan's the top 4 team. They're the only team that I've seen that hasn't been able to do that so far. So shout out to them. Excited for Purdue Maryland QB battle. Yeah, Aiden O'Connell versus Taulia Tagovailoa. That'll be pretty good. I'll take Purdue over Nebraska. That game is going to be in a couple weeks, right? It's coming up soon, probably, obviously. But yeah, the Big Ten West is so wide open. I don't know who's going to win it. You guys let me know what you guys think with that. I couldn't tell you who's winning the Big Ten West. But let me know what you guys think about my predictions this week. How bad am I going to be against the spread? I will say this. The first video I did for the SEC, I managed to get to, if you can see that, 5-2 against the spread. So don't count me out. Don't hate on me just because I'm taking Michigan. I'm taking the lower tier teams in the Big Ten to cover against the bigger dogs this week. It's the Michigan State one is probably the one I'm most worried about, simply because of how bad Michigan State has been playing. Michigan State has been playing a lot worse than Indiana. I'll tell you that much. They've been getting dominated every week since the Washington game. Indiana, on the other hand, they've been finding ways to win in these closer games. Absolutely got destroyed against Nebraska. Yes, it was only 14, but they got dominated. And then the Cincinnati game was honestly a mind-blowing loss. So maybe I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I get that you think they're going to cover easily. Like I said, when I made the prediction, I could on paper, Michigan's definitely 23.5 points better than Indiana. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think. Who's on upset alert? I didn't really talk about this. Again, this week is relatively a weaker week for the Big Ten, especially. mainly for the Big Ten, because I don't really see any games that are mind-numbingly jumping off of paper other than Maryland, Purdue. I think that'll be the best game so far. Let me know who you guys think is going to be on upset alert. Let me know who's going to cover. And thank you guys for watching this live prediction. I'll try to be back next week. So let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games that I picked. Will I go 6-0 or 0-6? We'll see. Against the spread, rather. I doubt I'll go 0-6 straight pick. But I've been trying to do against the spread. I've been trying to target that this year simply because it makes it a lot harder. Yeah, anybody can pick anybody to win on any given week. I can tell you this much. It's not that hard to pick Ohio State to beat Michigan State or Michigan to beat Indiana. The other games, they'll be closer, but or at least they are relatively closer in that aspect. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys real soon. Peace out, guys.